Danny Flexen for Seconds Out with Lou DiBella for the latest edition of DiBella's Digest. I haven't been keeping count, but I think this is around 15, 16 now.
Yeah, well, the last one turned out to be like a big controversy. Well, this guy wrote an article in the States, put it up on Boxing Scene that said I was, basically I was shitting my pants with fear and I was going out of business. I don't think that's not the message I wanted to leave anyone with last week. I was simply saying that my country is a shit show, which it is. And I'm just wondering what the future has to hold. We had some big announcements. Showtime announced some solid fights. They announced a couple of pay-per-views that I thought were ambitious as pay-per-views, but one of them certainly, the one with the Charlo brothers in two pay-per-views on the same day for one price. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. I'm hoping that they're going to get through their whole schedule through December. We'll see. But I think it was ambitious. It was a nice schedule. I think PBC put, their best foot forward. We just got baseball back, which is strange here. But the sports are starting to trickle back. It's interesting because stuff is opening and sports are beginning again in the States. But literally, we are a shit show. I mean, this country is like crazy. And I'm hoping that all these people that are coming back from Florida to return to New York don't reinfect us and get us into the same mess. But look, things are starting up again. I guess Joe Joyce is fighting this weekend. Is that right?
He is. That's right. Yeah.
Who's he fighting?
A German guy, Michael Wallisch.
Is he a real fighter?
He's okay, but he's lost to like Tony Yoka and Efe Jagba and kind of that sort of level of prospect.
Well, it's a keep busy fight, and Joyce needs to keep busy. He needs to get a win. So I understand that. I get it. But that's pretty much status quo is still the same.
You mentioned the PBC schedule, Showtime schedule rather. I think a lot of people were quite impressed with the whole package. Maybe not certain fights in particular, but the package as a whole. I think.
I think it was a statement to announce the whole slate at once. Yeah. I mean, it was a very effective announcement. It said, we're thinking ahead. Here's what we're planning through the end of the year. Now, I also understand those that are saying, well, it's really ambitious to plan through the rest of the year. But you know what? What do you have to lose? I mean, if it best laid plans sometimes don't come true, but it's not going to be anybody's fault. They're out there. They've established a run of fights. My understanding is Fox is going to have another announcement from the PBC about the fights they're doing with Fox. I've heard a rumor of a pay-per-view with Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. I think that's a terrific fight if that happens. But I'm actually a little bit surprised at how much pay-per-view between Mike Tyson fighting Roy Jones and Fox pay-per-views and Showtime pay-per-views. And if Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez happen on pay-per-view, there's going to be pay-per-views here constantly in the fall. And I'm wondering, we discussed this before, but it'll be interesting to see what people's tolerance is for writing checks.
We've got the same situation here, I guess. Maybe not to the same extent, but we've got Dubois Joyce scheduled for pay-per-view in October. Joshua Pulev, probably October or November. And then Fury, obviously it won't be in the UK, but it will be on pay-per-view over here against Wilder if it happens this year.
Well, let's hope the world economy hangs on through the end of the year. And, let's hope. But, I think things are going to get a little bit tougher. I do think that you're going to see fans making decisions. I think they will buy pay-per-views. I do believe that. I mean, I have a hunger for a really good fight. I mean, I want to see that Charlo Derevyanchenko fight really badly. I think Sergey can win. I want to see the other Charlo brothers fight. I think it's a terrific fight. I've already decided I'm buying that pay-per-view. But I can promise you I'm not buying 6 or 7 pay-per-views in the fall.
I thought that was an excellent pay-per-view. Not just the concept, which I know you're happy with, that there's an afternoon show and then an evening show, but just having the two brothers co-headlining in real fights as well. They're not kind of showcase fights for the Charlos. They're tough fights that could go either way.
No, the outcomes are in doubt in both fights. So that's, to me, compelling programming. I also think you are giving a little bit more value to the fan when you're doing 3 fights in the afternoon on pay-per-view, giving them a break and coming back with a second show, 3 fights at night. I thought that was very clever,
Yeah, I agree. You said that some of the pay-per-views might have been a little ambitious. Did you mean kind of Davis and Santa Cruz? Was that one of them?
You know, I don't want to say I'm not a Davis fan because I appreciate he's really good, but I mean, I don't see honestly any path Leo has to victory. Like, I just think Davis is too strong, much bigger guy. I think he's going to struggle to make the weight, but when they get into the ring, I think that Gervonta is going to be much bigger and stronger. I mean, I'm a big fan of Leo, but I think jumping up to fight the biggest and best guy, maybe at 130, is a interesting decision. I think that look, it's going to be a proof in my mind of Gervonta's star power. If he's able to do big pay-per-view numbers fighting Leo, and Leo's an attraction, he has a following in LA particularly. Good fighter, very good fighter. I just think he's outsized in that fight. I don't think it's particularly competitive, but if it does big business, then you got to say Gervonta's arrived as a star. If that pay-per-view does big business.
They're talking about having belts from both divisions on the line, though, aren't they? Like 130.
Yeah, who cares? I mean, anyone who's looking at anything that the WBA does right now, come on. And honestly, the ratings organizations are suffering like every other business, money-making business in the world, and that's what they are, by the way, money-making businesses. And they're suffering, and they're looking to make decisions that make them money. So, a lot of belts are for sale right now. A lot of fights are going to happen for titles because people can't travel, so the organizations, I think, are going to be a little bit loosey-goosey with their rulings and determinations. Not that they aren't always, but I think with the pandemic, they have more of an excuse. I was a little bit pissed off when the WBO announced recently that, they're going to scrape ordering an eliminator for Tego, who's been sitting up there in the division. But at the same time, I spoke to Paco Valcarcel, and I could see their point, because right now Tego can't leave Africa.
Well, yeah.
So I can't get him out of Africa. So, we're in difficult times, and it's going to cost some guys a little bit, certainly in terms of time, if nothing else. But let's hope for the best.
The WBA sanctioning the two belts for that fight just seems like a backstop in case Gervonta doesn't make 130. We can still put the fight on, but for the one belt rather than two.
Well, that would be atrocious in my view, if that happened. I don't like the idea of insurance policies with belts, but let's face realities. There's a permanent interim champion. There's always an interim champion. There's interim belt, regular belt, super belt. Now the WBO is going to have regular belt and super belt. The WBC has regular belt and franchise belt.
Yeah.
And what it's really going to do is it's more of the process, and I don't want to keep bitching, Danny, but of trying to fuck promoters all over the world whose recourse used to be get a high-quality fighter ranked into a mandatory position or high in the ratings, and you'll be protected. And right now, you're sitting there and you're fighting for the chance to fight a big name fighter, and that big name fighter never has to fight you. And if there's a franchise champion with top rank, the franchise champion never has to fight anybody that's not with top rank. There's a franchise champion with the BO, that's going to be the same thing. With the WBA, I mean, 4 champions in one weight class are too many, and it makes you wonder why. I don't know. I don't want to get into it because I'm not going to change. Nothing I say is going to change the system that's controlling this industry. And right now I understand that the ratings organizations are under economic pressure also, and they're going to do what's in their economic interest, period. It's not going to be a matter of fairness or this or that. It's going to be, where can we generate money? And to some extent, they are set up as businesses, and they need to do that. They need to cover their expenses, and they need to make money.
Now, you mentioned in passing one of the more surprising fights that's been scheduled for 2020, that of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. Going at it in an 8-round exhibition with apparently head guards but only slightly bigger gloves. What do you make of all that?
If people want to buy it, God bless them. Like I said this all along, I'm not going to fault. Like, I know Roy and Tyson. I have a good relationship with both of them. If you know what, it's possible, frankly, that could be the most successful pay-per-view in the States this fall, because there's certainly nobody with more name recognition than Mike Tyson and then Roy Jones. They're prideful men, so I'm going to guess they're going to mix it up in the ring, whether or not it's purely an exhibition. I don't know that they're going to be trying to take each other's heads off. I tend to doubt it. It's going to be questionable whether they can take each other's heads off with headgear and bigger gloves. But you know what, man? I don't really get. It's a free marketplace. People want to buy it. I don't look. I don't think it's a good idea to be punched in the head necessarily when you're in your 30s. It's certainly not a good idea to be punched in your head unless you're a rare human being like George Foreman or Bernard Hopkins in your 40s. I certainly don't think being around this age myself, getting in the fucking ring and being hit in the head when you're in your 50s. I'm not a big advocate of it, but these guys have free will. They want to do it. I wish them health, and I hope they have some fun, and I hope the people that buy it get a fun show. But I got to be honest with you, the idea that I got to watch Jake Paul or some of these other numbnuts fighting, ex-professional football players and shit like that, who the fuck wants to see that? I mean, I'd rather see the exhibition of Tyson and put some real boxing matches underneath it.
Yeah, the same way.
There's certainly enough legitimate fighters, boxers that need the work right now.
Yeah, so in the same way they did with the KSI Logan Paul show, having the likes of Devin Haney and Billy Joe Saunders on the same card.
Yeah, well, I'm looking to put my own fighters to work, but I'd like to see the likes of Charles Conwell or one of the other quality kids on the Oshaki Foster or one of the other contenders I have in a good matchup, or a good heavyweight matchup between two guys that are in their 20s instead of guys that are in their 50s, or the undercard having a real boxing match between two guys in their 20s underneath this exhibition with these 50-year-old men. But I'm not going to I'm not anti the exhibition if people want to pay for it. It's a free, like I said, it's capitalism at its best.
I don't know if they're going to be scoring the exhibition or not, but if they are, who would your money be on? Is there any way of kind of garnering who's the favorite going in?
I mean, if they're not holding their punches and the punching power is I don't know the size of these headgear, what kind of headgear they're using. I don't know the size of the gloves. I don't know the size of the ring. If it was no headgear and normal gloves at this point, I think power maintains itself better than speed and movement do.
Yeah.
I would go with Tyson. If the fight would have happened back when Roy beat Ruiz, unless Mike caught him and knocked him out, Mike would lose. I don't know if they're holding their punches and they're going to dance around. You got to favor Roy a little bit. If these guys are going to show pride and stand there and start trading with each other, then you probably still have to favor Tyson.
What do you think their motivation is individually?
They're fighters. They're fighters. That's the motivation. There's a famous Rocky Balboa, the movie I did with Stallone, that when we were working on the script, there was a little line that got inserted in the beginning of the fight when his son's asking him, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And he says, "Fighters fight." And that's what fighters do. Fighters fight. They know how to fight. Look, Sergio Martinez is one of my close friends. I love him. He's coming back without me as his promoter. I passed on working on his next fight. He's going to be fighting in Spain. And I love him and I support him and I want him to be healthy and I want him to win. I want him, and he gave me the opportunity to work with him, but I prefer he wouldn't be fighting. But when I spoke to him about it, he said, "Lou, it's my life. It's something I feel like I got to do." He goes, "I don't need the money. Right now, I'm bored. I want to test myself. I want to see how my body reacts after all these years off now." And he said, "I want to do it." And I said, he said, "Will you want to work with me?" I said, "No." He said, "Will you give me your blessing?" I said, "I'll always give you my blessing. I want you to be healthy and I want you to win and and I want you to, do what you got to do. What's right. You got to follow your own heart." So, that's sort of how I feel about those guys. If they want to do this, it's up to them. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because fighters fight, because that's what they know how to do. They know how to fight. And it's hard for a fighter to ever not be a fighter, even in old age. Hell, I was having conversations with Larry Holmes and Jerry Cooney when they were seriously considering having a little exhibition between themselves, and they're pushing 70. And then Larry trained a couple of times, and I got a call from him and his wife, and they were like, "Nah, I don't think so. I think I'm better off staying in retirement," which I'm happy was the right decision. But again, if they wanted to mess around with gloves and headgear, it's their prerogative. It's their lives. They're grown-ass men.
Now, without wishing to invite any more boxing scene articles, what is the current state of play with your business and where are you looking to make inroads over the fall period? Are there fighters you can get out on some of these shows?
I have a guy fighting on a PBC show in early August for a vacant WBA belt. Lennox Allen fighting a kid from Cuba. I have. I just made a fight for Eric Walker, who's coming off the Contender Series, to fight Israel Madrimov. Those will both happen in August. I'm working on a big fight, a big fight in New Zealand, where basically their border is closed off and they have no coronavirus, but their border is closed off with Joseph Parker and Junior Fa in the country. So we're seeing if we can make what would be a mega fight on New Zealand pay-per-view, and I'm talking to David Higgins right now, trying to see if we can make that fight happen. I have a couple of other little deals in the works. There's a lot of other issues. I have Tago sitting at number 1, can't get out of Africa. I have a deal for Comey to fight on ESPN as part of the deal that he made when he fought Teofimo Lopez. He can't get out of Africa yet. We're working on it. I have George Kambosos scheduled to fight Lee Selby on your end of the pond in October. I'm guessing that'll happen. No, there's a lot of things in the fire, but I can't do shows, and every venue in New York is shut down for fans. There are no bubbles working in New York. The commission's not handling stuff in New York. We're not back to business in New York in boxing. But I'm actively talking to every promoter. I talk to Eric Botcher and the guys at Matchroom, literally, with consistency. I speak to ESPN Top Rank with consistency. The same with Al and Luis DeCubis and the guys at PBC. I'm able to work with anybody, and I'm looking for opportunities. But most of the opportunities for fighters the rest of this year, you saw there's a big slate of fights that PBC is doing with Showtime. I think PBC effectively made a lot of matches that where they used their own guys. They have a lot of fighters. They need to keep them busy. But I have a lot of fighters that are ready to fight and in the gym. I've sent those lists out, and I'm looking to get as many of my fighters work as I possibly can. And so far, I actually think that up to this date, I've had more fighters fight during the pandemic than anybody other than Top Rank. So it's not like I'm not doing everything I can, but I'm not in a position to be able to do a show. And I can't do a UFC fight pass. And right now I had a Showbox date scheduled before. I had a couple of fighters, Conwell, who was going to highlight a Showbox date before the pandemic. I had a heavyweight show that was scheduled on Showbox. Right now, Showbox isn't back yet. I can't afford to do the fights on UFC Fight Pass without a live gate. Now, that being said, I think I have enough activity and enough action, and I'll be announcing some deals and stuff that'll bring in some revenue for my company. And I think that I'm fine to get, I'll weather this storm. But I ain't going to make believe it's good times. It's not.
The talks between yourself and David Higgins sounds like a fly on the wall documentary just begging to be made.
Oh, it could be. It's sort of hilarious because he's like very frenetic and he's calling me and texting me 4 hours in a day or night. And I've been pretty consistent with my position. But then he likes to use the press in New Zealand, and he's trying to he's trying to be guilt. Right now we're having a dispute because I asked for a guarantee for a junior that I thought was very fair. It's 500,000 New Zealand dollars, but it's about that between junior and myself, that's a total of 330 US or something like that, 500 New Zealand. And by the way, I would be able to get that normally for a fight of that magnitude. Here, over there, it's an enormous fight.
Yeah.
And but I also want to participate in the pay-per-view because Joe Parker's keeping the whole gate. He's keeping the international revenue that technically I own on Junior Fa fights, but I mean that's Joe's revenue. They're keeping the sponsorship revenue. So I have no problem with the overwhelming majority of the pay-per-view going to Parker, but not 100%.
Sure. So,
I argued for an upside that starts with the first buy for a certain amount per buy that go, but a minority situation. But like Higgins acts like I'm crazy, and then I have to remind Higgins, dude, I fucking was one of the people that discovered pay-per-view. The boxing pay-per-view business started with Seth Abraham, Mark Taffet, myself, Ross Greenberg. We started TV, HBO pay-per-view. I know more about the pay-per-view business than virtually anybody. It's like, don't tell me I don't care what you usually do in New Zealand. I want to make a fair deal. But here's the reality. If they wanted a big Joe Parker fight in the fall, in October. They have to stay on the island of New Zealand. They can't import somebody to come in. So therefore, Junior Fa is sitting on New Zealand and Hemi Ohio is sitting in New Zealand. And they're the two best heavyweights, the only guys that can really threaten Joe Parker. So they pretty much got to fight one of them. And I'm trying to make a fair deal for Junior. I am optimistic that Higgins and I will get it done. I mean, we're going to spar some more. I'm sure he's going to shit on me in the press again. I'll go on the New Zealand press and shit on him back. But I'm sure I have a feeling in the next week or two we should be able to make a deal.
And all the reciprocal shitting will just make the fight bigger anyway.
Well, it's a big fight to begin with. I mean, there's a lot of history. Junior beat him multiple times in the amateurs. It was a real, it wasn't an accident. They really seem to have each other's number in terms of fighting competitively. Joe's a terrific fighter, and obviously Joe's the bigger star right now in New Zealand. I'm not denying that. I'm just looking for a fair deal, but I think we'll make the deal, and I think Junior has a chance to win, a real chance to win.
Great stuff. Well, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. It seems like things are starting to brighten up a little bit, at least with fighters getting shots on other promoter shows as it stands. I look forward to seeing what next week will bring.
Well, the whole thing in the States you have to understand is people say other promoter shows, but when DAZN is exclusive to Golden Boy and Eddie, doing a deal with DAZN means doing a deal with those guys. Top Rank and ESPN are the same thing right now.
Yeah.
It's not, and honestly, Heyman pretty much controls the overwhelming percentage of Showtime's budget and has complete control over Fox, which is in my mind, Fox is the most desirable TV in the States right now because it's the most eyeballs, and it's primetime network television. So, it's not much of a choice. I think it's a great advantage to the fighters I work with that I can work with everybody. It certainly increases the possibilities.
Great stuff. Well, I look forward to seeing what next week brings. Hopefully we'll have a fight to announce. Maybe we can get the exclusive on Parker against Farr.
Maybe. You never know, Danny. Yeah. You seemed to get some weird exclusive last week on that I didn't even think existed. I finished our conversation. I never thought for a minute I suggested that I was scared for myself or I was retiring. But hey.
I was just grateful we clearly watched until the end of the video because it wasn't the headline.
Well, no,
was it?
And actually, you know what? I mean, on the theory that any publicity is good publicity, it certainly created a little bit more interest in our interview.
Well, there you go. Let's look on the bright side.
There we go. All right, Danny. Good talking to you, buddy.
And you, Lou. Take care. See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.